Good afternoon, everyone. We are back here again. For some people on the East Coast and in other parts of the world, I guess it's evening or early morning. Greene Fyre here back again. And we're going to have a lively discussion with Zach Schlosser. At least it will be lively if he tells us the truth of what it's been like to deal with some of my friends on Facebook, people that I'm affectionately calling the Rabid woke. And
okay. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm really grateful to be talking to you, Greene. Our interactions over the past few months have been really fun and educational and challenging for me in all the best ways. And I've really appreciated the...
Inspiring and embarrassing, depending on how insane my friends have been at any one moment.
Well, I've been really grateful for your attitude the whole time, which has been brilliantly, simultaneously super honest and super challenging, and also really kind and patient and flexible at the same time. So,
okay, everyone in the room who I've been crabbing at today as I've been having meltdowns of getting this done, Zach thinks I'm a nice person. Okay? Zach thinks I'm nice, bitches. All right, so go on. So this is fun. Do you have any other nice things to say to me? Because I'm like, oh, no.
Well, I haven't been watching I haven't been watching the rest of the conversations today. So maybe you've been really crabby, and maybe you don't want me to watch them because maybe I'll change my mind.
I'm one of those monster, evil women with the helmet hair who, when the person is putting on the makeup, they're like, "Don't touch me with your claws!" And then the camera comes on, they go, "Good afternoon. This is Amy Schlegel, and we're blah, blah, blah." I mean, it's like, I've just been, I mean, it's horrible. I try not to be that way, but sometimes you kind of have to be for the show to go on, right? I mean, you don't have to be horrible, but you have to be your nicest possible person when the camera's on. So anyway,
yeah, sure.
So let's talk about dealing with my horrible friends. This is going to be fun.
Okay, well, first of all,
what was that long conversation where I said, maybe you should look at this, and then everybody jumped on? Was it about geoengineering or something? I don't remember what it was about.
It was
the first one.
No, no. The very first one was about Facebook. You posted about Facebook's new policy. Censorship policy. And at that time, what you were posting about was they were going to start banning advertisements from Facebook pages that repeatedly posted things that they considered fake news. But at least from what I saw, they didn't. And I think they said they were going to judge whether it was consistently fake by some third-party evaluation board.
What was it, correct a record or something? Proper, not some horrible. I don't know. I don't remember. It was some incredibly bogus, deep state cutout censorship organization. But anyway, yes.
Yeah, so that was your concern. I mean, you posted this in terror, basically, and anger. And I...
but nothing scares me. I was kidding. No, just kidding.
People are saying hello. I've never done this before, so hello back to the people saying hello.
This fancy program, it gives us the option to post people's comments. So I'm just doing it so people feel like they're kind of in the conversation, and we don't have to stop and say hi to them. We can just have their comments up, and so we can have more of a flow. But hi to everyone.
And my this was sort of my portal to more radical news sources and frameworks and views than I had been exposed to before. So I posted, "What's wrong with that?" Basically,
that's right.
I thought that Facebook is one of the most media platforms around. I thought that Russian fake, or basically Russian interests had influenced the election, the 2016 election in part through fake news and advertisements on Facebook. And I thought, well, I certainly don't have any power. I have relatively little power to sift through all of those accounts to understand which ones are real and which ones are fake, to see which ones are malicious and which ones, even if they're ignorant, their intent is good. And why not rely on Facebook's massive data and machine learning algorithms to help us sift through that information.
And how did my friends respond to that?
Mostly by calling me an idiot.
They were horribly mean. They were incredibly
Yeah, and I would say not everybody,
mean.
but there was a common refrain which I've seen elsewhere in this more radical political space, which is something like nobody who's halfway intelligent could possibly believe this, or nobody except the dumbest of something. So it's some like incredibly low bar like insult could ever possibly believe X, and X is something that maybe I've never heard of before, or seems like very close to what I had previously considered, and I think most people consider conspiracy theory. And again, I'm not making a judgment on on that. I'm just saying this is how I was relating to it.
Okay, so let me ask you, what were your news sources at that time in your life? Because this is a very educational conversation. And also, tell us how old you are and where you went to college.
I'm 30. I went to college at Brown University. And most of my news sources were, at that moment, I actually was avoiding the news a bit, because in the first part of Trump's presidency, I leaned in and wanted to learn more and get involved. But after a little while, the constant anger and depression and hopelessness and just like the feeling of chaos was like, it felt like I felt like it was taking away from my ability to be productive at my projects where I was actually trying to do something good. And so I backed off. So, and whether that was wise or not, I don't know, but that's what I did.
Up until that point, what were your news sources?
Yeah. So that? I think pretty like, okay. So,
CNN, NPR, NBC.
Yeah. NPR, New York Times, Stephen Colbert.
Okay, and so so then there's all of these people who are like really freaked out and really scared and really angry, who've been watching the censorship, who just attacked you. And what came out of that experience?
Well, confusion and insight, and it's an ongoing question, because I would say that this happened. Okay, it's really subtle. So this happened to me again. I would say something like this happened to me again yesterday, where I posted on a friend's thread something critiquing. Let's see how much detail. So she posted a clip of Jimmy Kimmel moderating a conversation between a woman and her husband and their son, I think, young son. I think it was a young son. And the woman was a DACA recipient, and so there was a conversation between that family and these 6 anti-DACA advocates. I don't know if they were all Trump supporters. 2 of them were wearing MAGA hats, but they were anti-DACA. And my comment was, and the conversation didn't go well. There wasn't a lot of understanding between both sides, and there was some definitely like a lot of anger and unsympathy on the anti-DACA side from a 2 or 3 of the people, especially out of 6. And Jimmy Kimmel was trying to moderate this and try to bring people together, or I think that was the intention of the dialogue. So I posted something critiquing not the intention, but the execution of it. Right. And I said that Jimmy could have done better in a few different ways. And the main thing was that I felt like he set up sides between these 2 folks and was trying to advocate for one side being right, namely support DACA recipients, and the other side being, that being the kind position, and the other side being cruel and wrong. And
which is basic. And so my friends would all say, well, he's paid to do that because he's the mainstream media and he's part of creating the false duopoly, right?
Yeah. Okay. Right. So this was not my critique, though. My critique, because I still don't feel like I know, and I don't feel like I know enough about that to be able to say that with confidence, and then to like answer people's responses. So that was not my critique. My critique was, if he was trying to bring people together, he executed on that poorly, because in several different ways he set up this very stark sides, and that there's not going to be any coming together from that in that way if he did that. So, and the response was similar, which was mostly anger and confusion on other people's parts, and like being and taking what I thought was a pragmatic comment to improving their own goals, which I agreed with, being turned into some sort of character flaw on my part, and it being wrong for me not to be attacking and thinking that the anti-DACA folks, the people themselves, were essentially bad, awful,
right, evil people. So did you see that that research study that I posted in the Greene Fyre Review a couple of days ago, demonstrating that conservatives actually understand so-called conservatives understand liberals better than liberals understand conservatives, because conservatives think that the liberals are news kettled and the liberals think that conservatives are evil. Did you see that? They don't they don't even ascribe to them the most basic human sensibilities. Like they think that conservatives think that it's okay to kick dogs or shoot them in the head. It's
this is my question, for your community and fans as well.
And by the way, I was a Bernie, and Jill supporter. I grew up a Democrat in Massachusetts, so I lived in the West for 25 years. I don't fit into any of these boxes anymore. I'm a listener now, as much as I can be, with an obnoxious Massachusetts personality. Go on.
Yeah, so that is my sense also, that and I mean there's research to show this, like when you essentialize someone like that, it's not conducive to them changing their opinions. They don't become open when you essentialize and turn someone into a negative image. Yeah. So this is a pragmatic response to this. So both in that situation and when I originally started interacting with your friends, the response was so negative. And my question is that ever useful? Period. Ever, for anyone with anyone?
Exactly. And I said that in the thread, and people apologized to you.
Yes, there were a couple of those people that apologized.
That became your friend. And I said to them,
that's true.
You guys, Zach is trying to create the school of the future. He's trying to educate himself. He's trying to become more woke than woke. I met him in the Integral community, which is a community of people who are questing to really develop our minds and to attain wisdom. And you guys are shredding him. He is the person that you should be the most open to of anyone, because he's the future. He has the education and the means and the power of his young life to try to make a difference. You should be mentoring him. And some people apologized to you, and I felt like, well, that was a really painful and embarrassing thing to go through with you. But you were very kind about it, and I appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I would say that it's, so what would be a situation if we took it all the way and we were trying to be very generous? The question would be, what situation would it be useful to call a political enemy an awful, evil,
that's right,
unchangeable person? And maybe when you're with your like close friend and you're really just trying to vent, and it's not about saying what's true, it's just about it's just about catharsis. Maybe it's useful there. But in a conversation when you're trying to whether one person's trying to learn genuinely or not, which I think, which is the case in my situation with your friends, if you're in a situation where you're trying to change someone's mind, I think it's almost never useful to changing that person's mind.
It's not.
It could be useful. I think it probably is useful for solidifying the alliances that you have with people who think that they already agree with you.
Tribalism.
But yeah, exactly. But I don't think anyone's actually honestly arguing that that's the solution that we need going forward.
No. Tribalism is just a momentary. It's a momentary burst of endorphins, like watching your favorite quarterback punch somebody in the face on the fucking field. It's just like watching the Bruins, hip chuck somebody on the other team. It's a purely animalistic tribal response. And as students of spiral dynamics, you and I understand that there's a theory that cultures can progress into more sophisticated ways of being, out of the tribal into other more sophisticated ways. So we're watching people who think that they're woke act in ways that are horrible. They think that they're in a more evolved level of sophistication and inclusion, acting in tribal ways.
Yes. Yeah.
So sorry to put words into your mouth, but okay.
Yeah,
so
I don't know exactly. And it gets real subtle when you start talking about, okay, well, whose responsibility is it to be kind? Whose responsibility is it to educate or to educate others or educate themselves? But mostly I think that those nuances miss the point, which is that interpersonal kindness has to be everyone's responsibility and the root for doing everything else better. So it might be the case, for example, that it's not somebody else's responsibility to educate me in a certain moment, in a certain situation. But I don't think it's ever going to be useful for somebody to point that out with hate or with anger as the attitude with which they're doing it. And I don't do this perfectly either. I definitely don't. There's all kinds of subtle aggression in the ways that I correct people sometimes.
That's because you're an entitled, microaggressing, upper class white male who's been newscattled by the New York Times. And I secretly do hate you very, very, very much. Saying I agree, Marilyn. No, but I know she wasn't agreeing with that. But I just wanted to have. And now I want Audrey Hepburn to give you the finger.
It says Buddha cat on her forehead.
Buddha cat. That's Buddha cat. She's awesome. Okay, so anyway, Zach. So things are pretty horrible, and if we don't start laughing, we're all gonna fucking kill ourselves.
Okay, great. Then let's laugh.
I mean, we're at year fucking 4. Bernie Kratz are at year fucking 4. Okay, 2015 is when we all got on the Bernie wagon. By March and April of 2016, when we saw what was happening in the primaries, the bottom fell out of our world. Then we have had Trump for a fucking year. Okay, so now we're in 2018, 2015, 16, 17, 18. Can we pull ourselves together and start working on solutions and have a little sense of love and compassion and holy fuck, we're in this together? And that leads me into, how can the School of the Future help us to get there?
Well, it's okay. So again, the School for the Future. I would love, I would love feedback from folks in this community about how the School for the Future can address the situations that you're looking at, the problems that you're looking at.
So everyone knows that the Greene Fyre Review is developing into a collaborative. Zach is asking for us to collaborate with him for this to be a collaborative effort. He's just the figurehead in the way that I was briefly the figurehead for the Greene Fyre Review. Now there's a whole bunch of really bizarre and unruly cats that are being herded, not even by me anymore, mostly by Will.
Mhm.
So let's like direct things to Zach so that he can be a coordinator of a collaborative effort. So lay it on us, Zach. What is it you need from us?
Sure, sure. Well, so the School for the Future is it's starting as online social innovation education.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to weave together education at the leading edges of activism, social entrepreneurship, and personal development,
Mm-hmm.
and self-transformation. And I see those three things going together because I think those groups of people are generally the ones who are willing and able to make the most radical changes in society, and those that um, that scale and that kind of that radical break are the kinds of solutions we need, and we also have an opportunity to make those kinds of solutions right now because things are falling apart. So so basically the goal of the school is to train people in the inner and outer skills to be very effective, enlightened social innovators. So basically, I need help developing. We have I have initial partners, um, instructors who are great, and courses that we've developed that are great. Mostly, I need help reaching people, finding the right audience for this, developing new content, weaving these topics together into curricula, into an integrated curricula, and getting educated myself much more in all of these fields.
Okay, so can you give us some more? By the way, I want to point out that in the instance where you came in with a certain level of education and awareness and experience on a topic, you're talking to people who you did actually learn some more information from, but
Definitely,
you demonstrated the social intelligence. You demonstrated a social intelligence that trumped and actually educated them about how to share their actual factual information. And so
Well, I
I'm
don't know if it
certain,
trumped them. I mean, I'm glad. I think
no,
it
I'm
might have
telling
only
you,
trumped them because you pointed that out and you told people to stop being mean.
oh, trumped is the wrong word because it's competitive, but I'm using a
Uh-huh.
lot now because it really stabs at our shadow and helps us to realize why he bugs the shit out of us so much, right?
Got it.
So, and I'm a little bit of a trickster. I do have a master's in education, but my idea of pedagogy is to like fuck with people's minds and like be like smart and funny and fuck with their mind all at the same time. And so that they like have to deal with it because I am basically evil and, which you already know. And so, I just want to point out that that was an instance where that learning was global and almost everyone stayed in. Nobody just said, he's a jerk. Why is he your friend? Almost everyone went, oh, fuck, we're idiots. Or they just got quiet in the conversation and watched it. And so you were talking about the inner and the outer, but it also sounds to me like it's inner and outer, but it's also sort of like education in like heart and mind. There's a lot of dualities in the ways that we can look at this. It's an education in EQ and IQ. So can you talk a little bit about your pedagogy and about your cosmology and your sort of the etiology of how you developed this?
It's a lot of ologies.
Well,
Sure.
we could throw in a few. We could also go into some eschatology if you need. And then if you do a really good job, then I'm going to offer a short sobriquet of micro hagiographies.
Micro hagiographies. Wow.
Yes.
Like as haikus, hagiographical
Hi-
haikus.
Hagiographic IQs. Oh God, it's so nice to talk to
Um,
smart, liberal arts educated East Coasty people.
well, you're. I think you're maybe the first person to use the word sobriquet in a sentence out loud, and I don't know what it means. Although it's in a
Well,
Mars
well,
Volta song that I really like, and I don't know what it means when I sing it
well,
either.
we're in the West. We do a lot of barbecuing. Sobriquets are like the little tiny briquettes that are lavender scented.
Okay,
Like,
got it. Okay, sure. So the school, the full history of the school goes back to when I was at college, and I really got into meditation. And basically, for 4 years, my life became contemplative practice, mostly in the Buddhist tradition. Majored in comparative mysticism,
You have you have a tanka behind you. Is that a Tibetan Buddhist tradition?
It is. I'm currently living at a Tibetan Buddhist meditation center in the woods, a few hours north of San Francisco.
Okay.
And which is awesome. And so, yes, this is the person behind me is named Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. He's the father of Chukyi Nyima Rinpoche, who is the current head of this international organization that this center is a part of.
Okay.
So got really into Buddhism, took time off to do a 6-month meditation retreat. So that was just like my life. That was, I went to a really good school. It's very politically active, but that's just not where my head was at the time. And that's why I need to do a lot of still self-education. So spirituality was my life for a long time. I was very, very impressed by my mentor, my academic mentor at Brown, Professor Hal Roth. I was very impressed by the hard work he had done consistently over many years to integrate contemplative practice into academic courses at Brown against a lot of resistance from the religious, his peers, his colleagues, and to do that in a really academically rigorous way. And I was very grateful for that because Buddhism's ethical impulse to focus on suffering and the alleviation of suffering, and to make that the whole thrust of one's life, both for oneself and for other people, seemed like obviously the most important thing to do, the kind of large framework that would make the rest of life meaningful and productive. And it had a really rich set of practices to change one's mind, and that is, I was just like aesthetically incredibly attracted to this idea of taking mind and experience as one's craft. So I dove in pretty hard. Yeah. So then in the back of my mind was like, okay, education that weaves intellectual development and contemplative development, experience training. That's wow, beautiful, amazing. So then after college, I did a bunch of different stuff, taught meditation, was a tutor. That's mostly how I made my money, was as a tutor, educating high school students, but did a bunch of other things. And then co-founded a company with an executive coach, and it was a leadership development tech company called Numina. It's still going, Numina. And we built an app that guides people through deep, mostly shadow work kinds of experiences to uncover ways in which there are emotional habits that they're not aware of having negative impacts on the ways that they're going about doing their work and relating to other people. So the goal of that was to use the app plus some coaching to enable individuals to coach each other inside the workplace, and to give coaching to whole teams all at once, so that you can spread out this kind of culture of self-development and culture of trust and culture of transformation in organizations. I decided not to keep going with that company because it just wasn't my baby, but I learned from that and from my exposure to social entrepreneurs, how powerful a tool that is or can be for making real change in the world. Because my critique of Buddhism has always been that although the mind trainings can be very, very profound, especially for the most talented people who practice and who have the best resources and teachers to practice, its technologies, this is my critique, its technologies for democratizing this kind of transformation are quite weak. And especially in Tibet, pre-communist revolution, it was a feudal society where 80 to 90% of the people were serfs.
And of course, the theosophical / New Ager types have been saying for the last 100 years that the reason why Tibet had to be toppled from a karmic sense, Tibet's sovereignty had to be interrupted, is because there was a spiritual selfishness there, and they needed to bring it out to the rest of the world. So all of that karma assigning stuff, which the the Tibetans, by the way, ironically also do, is very questionable to me. But I can say that I'm grateful that there was an opening to the West, and I have also benefited a great deal from the teachings. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to see if I can move my camera around so that you can see my. I guess you can't see her. I have a Greene Tara is the center of our house. She's on the kitchen island. But anyway.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
So
Greene Tara is a representation of compassion for folks.
That's right. She's one of the Buddhas of compassion. And we have
a
crazy shrine to her, and we put all kinds of weird shit like mini gnome houses and fertility African. She's wearing an African fertility necklace, and it's whatever we think is meaningful at the moment to give her. So anyway.
Cool. Yeah. So that's how I got introduced to social entrepreneurship and wanted to keep going with that. And then the activism thing. I have friends who are activists, mostly on the social justice side of things. I'm attracted to that. I'm attracted to kind of like data privacy kind of activism. I'm attracted to like blockchains for distributed governance kinds of activism. So I'm somewhere
Have you been watching some of the James Corbett that I sort of recommended that you watch? Have you been?
A while ago, I did watch some of his. So
he's really big on the distributed governance, self-governance, blockchain. He's been very helpful to a lot of people in my circle of friends and in our movement. Anyway, so sorry to interrupt. Go on.
Yeah, I agree with things that I've been hearing, that the kind of moral fault line for the next several decades is not between left and right, but is between centralization and decentralization. I think that's right, and I think that the
central control, the banking cartel. Yeah,
exactly. The side to be on is on this decentralized side.
So I like that you're using language that's not inflammatory. It's been difficult for all of us post-progressives to start talking about these things without saying phrases straight out of Alex Jones that make us sound like completely like soap mouth foaming nutcases to everyone who hasn't started asking the same questions.
Well, this is the hard thing for people who have been in that world for many years, is that's two things. One is that's a cultural trope. So one, you're getting trained to be that way by other people who are like that. In that culture. Yeah. So on the one, just at that level, it's just a habit that doesn't have to be that way. It's not the only way to relate to the information that it might be true and that you're learning. Secondly, I get it. Yeah, some of the things are like incredibly scary and insidious, and so it's very, very hard to be patient with it, especially if you're somebody who's impacted directly by the negative things happening. But the third thing is basically like you don't have an option. None of us have an option if we're trying to make a change. We have to be focused on what's effective. Right. And there's just no other way to say that.
And I've really appreciated the way that you've taken some of the things that you've been taught. You've been very gracious to the people who've been trying to teach you. And then I've seen you going to some of the groups and on your own page that we are sort of where we came together, some of the integral spiritual seeking groups, and asking questions like, what do you see as the big dichotomies? And coming up with formulations like centralization versus decentralization, rather than saying, kill the Fed and the evil Zionists. I mean, it's been wonderful to see you find a way to say these things that's, it's just so logical. And, and then people can say, so now you're a libertarian, and they can yell at you, but you just simply said something that was very pragmatic, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. And so this is another ongoing inquiry for me, which is another kind of opportunity to collaborate with the community here, which is really asking the question of how do we be effective in conversations or with specific actions to make specific changes. Like that is the root. Well, I would say maybe the root value of the school is love, but another root value is effectiveness. Buddhism has, and not just Buddhism, but that's what I'm steeped in. Buddhism has tools to train flexibility, to train mental flexibility,
Right.
to train non-reactivity, to train power and presence and compassion in the midst of attack. So
Right.
that's why that's a part of the School for the Future. But I want to make a plug for a friend's podcast, which I think can also be, because we need emotional training. It's not just intellectual training here. We need emotional training and
Totally need emotional.
We need to template off
before you
people
make the
doing
plug for your friend's podcast. I want to put out who was it? Patricia Neal, who wrote Magic and Mystery in Tibet. She traveled in Tibet like 100 years ago. Anyway, she was the first person although I'd been studying theosophy and sort of the trans-Himalayan Western mysticism blended traditions for decades before I read her book, or was it Alicia? Anyway, she pointed out that in Tibet, the monasteries are laboratories, and that there are hundreds of different disciplines that people can try and can engage at the suggestion of your mentor lamas. And people who get introduced to Tibetan Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, or one of the Mahayana traditions, they think that that's it, that this is Buddhism. But the truth is that Buddhism doesn't have a sense of what is Buddhism. Buddhism believes that there's a set of technologies, and she described some people like going mad for like a decade at a time because they were possessed by a demon. And I don't recommend this, but the lamas were saying, well, that's his experiment in essence. And so to what degree are people like freaked out and they're saying, oh my God, just give me the methods? Or are people saying, how do we develop them together?
What are people saying to me? Yeah, most people aren't. Yeah, I think this is another thing that it's like I need to reach the right community, because I would say that the conversation around the ways that contemplative practice could be integrated into social change efforts is only just starting.
Yes.
And is not really well developed. And there's a lot to say about why it's not developed, and how far it could actually go. I would say that it's mostly in terms of the kind of consensus discussion in this field, I would say it's mostly at the level of like, we don't know, and it's a potential, and we're inspired, and we should find out and be rigorous about finding out, because there's a lot of...
Okay, and what is it specifically that people are saying they don't know? How to bring contemplative practice into developing community?
Not just how, but I would say in what ways is it efficacious? In what ways is it helpful?
Bother?
And first, I'll come to this, but first I want to finish making the plug for... So the podcast is called Reckonings.
Okay.
Reckonings. It's run by my friend Stephanie Lepp, and the whole point of the podcast, she interviews people.
Reckonings, Stephanie Lepp. Thank you. Sure, it's great to have a producer in the room. Yeah,
that's great. She interviews people who have gone through a massive change of heart, and often they're public intellectuals, or they've been in government, or they've been in large corporations, and they come to see that, or they're parents of people who have transitioned genders. So people who have been in emotionally intense situations and have come to see that what they were doing before was deeply problematic or wrong or hurtful. And so she's trying to have she's having a compassionate, curious, and challenging inquiry with them about what was happening there, why they believed what they believed, what they did, and what changed, how they changed.
Right.
So in terms of emotional templating, to have a different relationship with dark forces and trying to respond effectively, I think Reckonings is a good place to do some emotional templating, some emotional learning.
So you'd see that Will has just found that and has put it up for us. This is like so cool. I feel like I'm Howard Stearns and Willis, that really hit black woman who I always thought was way cooler than Howard Stern, who was his producer. Whose name I can't remember. I would like watch for her and like turn the sound off and like hear what she had to say. Anyway, I only watched him a couple times and I was like, not for me. Anyway, but it's good to have a producer.
Yeah, okay. So you asked a question about how to integrate contemplative practice and social innovation, activism, or social entrepreneurship. So I think that there's different levels to this. The maybe most exoteric level, we might say, is something someone posted, training attention, and I would say that that's right. That you basically can learn to put your attention where you want to put it, and that's effective. That's helpful for being productive at anything.
Patanjali, or the whole sequence of all of the yogas. You know, there's like in most of the traditions I recognize, there's many different levels of training. The training attention is that's as simple as doing contemplative reading. Really, sort of Talmudic reading is to read a text and then contemplate on its meaning and to like look for inspiration or intuition to come on the text. So, or training your attention on your breath. There's lots of simple things that if 25% of our culture did 1 6-week simple course in training their attention, it could make an enormous difference in our ability to have both EQ and IQ in terms of facing our discussions going forward. So anyway, going on. Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
And I said I agree with that. I think, but I'm a little bit more with all this kinds of stuff. I tend to be I have a lot of doubt. So I would say yes, I agree with that, but also it's a big experiment, and we should find out what the extent of the benefits are, not just lead with hyperconfidence.
Well, I mean, I found a personal benefit, but you know, I've also been through horrible experiences with people who were narcissistic and abusive, and who were trying to simultaneously meditate the autistic out of me, since I'm on the autistic spectrum, and being abusive to me because my brain didn't work like them and I wasn't trying hard enough. So there's lots of different systems and things you can put yourself through that aren't necessarily going to be helpful. And yeah, doing some more research so that we can sort of efficientize this and not making every person go through every experiment on their own is certainly a very good idea.
Yeah.
But if anyone wants to know how to stay away from the abusive or narcissistic gurus, you can send me a message. I should write that one up. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. And we can move through this a little bit faster. But I would say that the other things that I'm interested in looking at how contemplative practice can influence social innovation is attention. Another is deep value alignment. So I think that you can both do this as a direct and as an indirect effect of meditation practice, different kinds of meditation practice, where you get insight into and you become more aligned with your deepest values. And so I think that that's really, really, really helpful for sustainable, effective social innovation. Both in terms of aligning with a general goal that you want to have, making people, radicalizing people more, but also picking the right strategies that are useful for you. You have to know who you are better. Another is, and you alluded to this, is non-reactivity. So it can be a side effect of attention training, but basically non-reactivity in the midst of intense emotional situation. Related thing is training positive emotions, and which makes your life better, but also makes people way more attracted to you, and way more open to your position. And this is something. Yes. And this can go very deep.
Right. Too. Let me just throw this really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you think about the yogas divided into the physical or hatha yogas, and then you have the bhakti yogas, which is training your emotions, right? And then the raja yogas, which are training the mind, and then there's the agni and the other yogas, which are we don't know what they are because that's something that happens to very few individuals, and it's really not easy to impart. But the bhakti, the training yourself to be in a positive state, which in the simplest form in our culture, people know of that as gratitude training, although the way most people do it turns me into like a horrible troll, and I have to tell them how obnoxious and irritating that is. Because I think I feel like a lot of people do it in a way that is designed to repress their negative issues and not look at them, and to enhance their entitlement as a kind of an incrustation or a shield around them. And also just because I'm a troll. I mean, that's just who I am. Yeah. Embrace your shadow, right?
We're talking about the way the contemplative practice has a positive influence on social innovation, but that's what you just said is why social innovation can have a positive influence on contemplative practice, right? Especially if you're committed to seeing results, because that kind of what is called spiritual bypassing, using spiritual practices to neglect the actual emotional.
That's right.
Either like the actual emotional problems that you're dealing with, or the material problems in the world that need to be dealt with. If you're in a school that's dedicated to having positive results in society, we can't get away with using spiritual practice in that way. Right. And I hope that's another way that people can help, is like, help us, all of us, come up with good measures for impact. And holding the school accountable to that. And
we see in the the technology and the groups that are studying this right now is to go around diagnosing people and saying, you're just projecting your shadow. So it's like this microaggression fest where like people aren't actually owning up to anything. They're just going around saying, well, you're not listening to me. You're projecting your shadow. And there's all of this like microaggressive microdiagnostic microaggression or something. And so we really need to be developing these tools that can be applied in a way that doesn't feel onerous.
Yeah. Okay. And then I want to finish the contemplative thing a little bit. So we talked about positive emotions, and I said, and this can go very deep. So I think one of the kind of magic of masters is that sometimes, and there's a lot of, it's very complex. There's a lot of things that go into this, but I think there is an authentic piece here, which is that they're so positive. They're so positive that you can just like melt in front of them because you feel safe, and it just feels like they're creating this like beautiful life. It's like, obviously I want to be like that. Obviously I have respect for you. Obviously I'm interested in what you're doing and what you're advocating. It's just like, we are so emotional. We're so emotional. And when you touch people on that emotional level, it's like it bypasses so much of this mind of the intellectual stuff.
But then, but people, if people feel like you're listening to them and that you are accepting them, and I mean, I'm somebody who has a lot of very emotional, volatile reactions, and I find that the only way through for me is to be able to let that stuff live on the surface, so other people know that whatever the fuck they're going through. Some people, that beatific thing, you don't know what the hell is roiling inside of there, but you know they're holding it down so that they can be with you. Everyone has to find their way through this. My best EQ comes from being able to just say, well, I'm somebody who's a mess and I'm feeling all of this stuff right now, but I'm also striving to be with you. So the intention is actually more important than your actual manifestation of any beatific energy. And being able to be your whole self in business, how the fuck do you do that? That's verboten. That is forbidden. What are you laughing about over there, Will? I think Will is creating memes about us or something. He's not even listening. And I'm like, did I make a point, or is Will totally ignoring us and laughing about something else? He's laughing because it's true. Okay, in that case, it's because I hit the truth. Anyway, so what were you going to say?
So then the last thing I want to say about the contemplative practice stuff is that I think it's possible that deep contemplative practice over the long term actually changes the ways our mind works and makes radically innovative insight and intuition and holistic thinking and creative action much more possible. And I don't, there's stories of this kind of stuff all over the place in traditions, but I want to see it tested and brought into the real world much more.
Okay, so because I'm all about like marketing and summing up and giving you like your cheesy tagline, center yourself for a decentralized world.
Oh, that's cool.
That's free. That's just karma point. Next life, when you're my mom and I'm a really irritating child, be nice to me.
Great. I remember that phrase. Center yourself for a decentralized world.
For your decentralized
That's
world.
it. That's really
it. Okay, we're going to have more of these conversations. I'm loving this. This is really great. And we're going to share this out a lot. So do you have anything else?
So if people want to learn more, if people want to learn more, go to theschoolforthefuture.com, theschoolforthefuture.com. And you'll see that I've got the curricula for the initial courses up there. There's interviews with the instructors on the blog. We're just starting, so we're doing a lot of recruiting and audience building, and we'll be publishing podcasts and content soon so that when we're ready to start the courses, we'll have an audience ready to take them.
Okay, this is great. Zach, do you have somebody who's helping you to create sort of like helping people to land like in human history and, like the global power structure? Because I not only know people who could be useful who are very spiritual like Bob Bose, but, as a curriculum designer, somebody who's been studying this, I would love to be engaged with you in some way around that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm very interested in that. History is not, the school is focused, all the courses are going to be very project-based, and they're focused on businesses or campaigns that people actually are starting and running. But I think, yes, some frameworks and history are super important. So I'd like to talk to you more about that.
Well, I would love to be able to create something. See, I have this I'm like Ben always tells me I can't get a Jack Russell Terrier or a pit bull because he already lives with a terrier, because I get on something and I'm like, and I like have to like chew on it. And I'm like really chewing on this problem that Chris Hedges really articulated well when he talked about the news kettled 30 million, the most educated, the most mentally trained, sophisticated professional class, mostly coastal, mostly East Coast, who are surgically kettled by the New York Times and NPR and CNN to have a very specific worldview. And you've been coming up with some formulations that just slide right in there, like the finest acupuncture needle. And I'm interested in creating some ways to talk about this shared reality that don't inflame anyone. And this is a project-based course. That's
cool. Actually, that's awesome. That's an awesome course. I would love to do that course.
Let's do it. Let's just create it, Zach, because I'm ready. We're looking for collaborators who could even understand what the fuck I was trying to say.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fucking awesome. We're gonna do it. I would love to do that.
Yay! All right. So, pit bulls are the best. Thanks, Ben. Set yourself for a centralized world. Love that decentralized world. Lots of really sweet people here who are watching this. Diana's
thanks,
lovely.
Everyone.
Thanks, Buddha Cat. Talking about lineage. This is fantastic. So all of these comments are going to be on here. Please, everyone, reach out to Zach. He's a really sweet guy. I'm sure he'll accept your friend requests. And we're all going to help make this school of the future, because we essentially are the school of the future. It's all about our lineage and what we're bringing forward. Okay, love you. Namaste, namaskar, all of the above.
Thank you, Greene. Wonderful to be here with you today.
You
Thanks,
too.
everyone.
Bye-bye.